All right. I got a cough drop, so I should make it. I tell you, these sinuses are doing a number on me. Well, I'm pretty excited about tonight. We get to talk about Elijah. I think he's one of those characters that I just really love. I've always enjoyed the story of Elijah and Elisha, actually. I like these prophets. We usually, a lot of times, think of them as superheroes almost, and just the things that happen in their life. And so this sermon's going to be a little bit different than I normally do. There's not really just a lot of points, or the way I think I want to do it is I just want to basically tell you the story of Elijah. I just want to go through the things that happened in his life, and then at the very end, I'm going to give you basically a few takeaways that I take away, and that I see that I can apply to my own life, and maybe you can apply that to your life as well. So, to start off, to have some backdrop to knowing about what's going on when Elijah, this prophet in the Old Testament, shows up, you need to know about the kingdom of Israel. So, there's the kingdoms. If you remember, there was Solomon, then there was King Saul, then there was David, and there's all these kings. Well, now the kingdom is divided, and they have split. There's Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and then there's Judah, which is the southern kingdom. And so they both had their own kings and stuff like that. All the kings in like the northern were just terrible guys. And but there were some good kings in Judah, but there was also some bad kings that didn't follow the Lord. But what we're going to really focus on is where Elijah was at. And Elijah spoke to the kings in the northern kingdom. The most prominent one that we know about, and really who he spends most of the time talking to, is Ahab. Have y'all heard of Ahab? Have you heard of his wife? Jezebel. All right, so the pretty popular, pretty famous individuals here. And so one thing that we need to know about Ahab and I guess Jezebel, one is Ahab was kind of a wimp when it came to being led by his wife. He was definitely led by his wife. He was king, but he didn't have really that much of a backbone. And Jezebel, I think, kind of run the kingdom is really what kind of happened. So Ahab, he ended up marrying this pagan woman, Jezebel, and made her his queen. And what she did is she introduced Baal worship, this idol worship, into the kingdom of Israel. And with her guidance, they tore down many of the altars that were to the Lord. And they put up altars to Baal and to Asherah, which was Baal's girlfriend, to say the least. So there's these pagan gods that they had set up and that they started worshiping and pushing the people of Israel and led the children of Israel away into this Baal worship. And so this is where Elijah comes on the scene, and Elijah's, he's trying to fight this Baal worship. Now, it is a terrible religion, whatever you want to call it, but they actually sacrificed their children to Baal. They saw Baal as this very also powerful god, little g, but they saw him as he was over the rain. He was over the seasons. He also had the power of lightning, and there was these things that they saw him as being powerful. So they depended on him for the rain, so that the land was fertile, so that they could have food and all these things. And that's what they worshipped him for. So then we have Elijah come on the scene. And when we first see it, it is in Elijah, it's in chapter 17 of Kings. So 1 Kings chapter 17 is the first time that we see Elijah. And it says, now Elijah, he comes in and he says to Ahab, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, surely there will neither be dew nor rain these years except by my word. And so he brings this prophecy, and actually it's from Deuteronomy. God tells the people if they go and they play the harlot, if they go and they worship other gods, that he's going to make it where a famine will come and where rain will cease. And this was a prophecy. So Elijah's just proclaiming what God has already said. And so he comes sharing, hey, you know what? Y'all have gone and y'all have worshipped Baal. And so now what? There's not going to be rain, but more than that, not just rain, there's not going to be dew. So no fresh dew in the morning, and no rain. And so this occurs, and of course you can imagine this makes Jezebel and Ahab extremely upset because all of a sudden they start feeling the pain. Now, soon as this took place, or after he said this to Ahab, God tells Elijah, he said, the word of the Lord comes to Elijah, and he tells him, go to the brook Cherith. And so it's on the east side of the Jordan. And so Elijah takes off. He goes to this brook, and it's kind of like God is saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep you safe for a while. And so I'm going to provide for you during this famine, during this drought when there's no rain. So go to this brook. And so he goes to the brook. He's staying and living there at this brook, and he is fed by a raven. Every morning and every evening, ravens came and brought him bread and meat. Isn't that, I think that's pretty amazing. So God provides for him miraculously by having ravens bring him food. And so he's just chilling by this brook. He has some water. He's able to drink. He's being, replenished, and he's getting not just bread or manna like they did in the wilderness, but he's also getting some meat, So he's having meat. He's having bread. And eventually, after spending many days there and a time there, even that brook dries up. After all, they're in a drought. There's no rain. And so this brook dries up, and it says that the word of the Lord comes to him again. And so the word of the Lord comes to him again. He says, Elijah, go to Zarephath. So go to Zarephath, and I prepared a widow who's going to take care of you, that's going to provide for you. And so Elijah takes off. He goes to Zarephath. Now, here's the interesting thing. Zarephath is basically where Baal worship started. It is the birthplace of Baal worship. Jezebel's home was like right close to Zarephath. So her original home before she moved down to Jezreel to stay at the kingdom palace, this was kind of her home stomping grounds. And this is where Baal worship originated. And so God sends Elijah to Zarephath to keep him safe. He puts him right in the middle, smack middle of Baal country, the exact God that he's speaking against, and he puts him in the middle of it. And so he goes there, and sure enough, when he comes to the outside of the gates, there's this widow. She's gathering sticks, and he approaches her, and he says, hey, give me some water. I need something to drink. And she starts to go to get him some water. And he says, oh, by the way, give me a piece of bread and bring me back a piece of bread in your hand for me. And she goes, oh, but I have only a handful of flour and a little bit of oil. And he says, well, he said, go ahead and make me some bread and bring me a piece of that bread first. And then you can make some for, might add, that's all she had. And she said, I'm fixing to make this, and me and my son are going to eat it, and we're going to die because we're starving. That's all we have left. And he said, well, why don't you go ahead and make me a piece first? Bring it to me. And then if there's, what's left, you can make your one for you and your son. But he says this. He goes, but the Lord basically promises that your flour bowl will not be empty, and neither will your oil. They will not run out. Matter of fact, it says they will not run out until the Lord brings rain back to the land. And so she does what Elijah says. She goes and she makes him some bread. She feeds him. She gets to eat herself with her son. And it says that Elijah stays there for a while. We don't know how long he stays there, but he stays there for a while longer. Once again, it's miraculous. God is guiding his every step. It says the word of the Lord came to Elijah, and he went to Zarephath. He obeyed the word of the Lord, and he followed after what God told him to do. And he goes there, and sure enough, God's providing for him. Now, while he's there, something happens. The widow's son dies. It says that he's without breath. And her first response is, you have brought this calamity on me. You and your God, you've brought this calamity. That's why my son has died. And she plays the blame game, and he says, give me the boy. And he takes the child, and he takes him up to the upper room to where he was staying. And he cries out to God. He prays to God to bring this boy's life back. And it says that he lays himself over this boy 3 times. And the breath comes back into him. The life comes back into this young boy. And then he takes him down, and he gives back to the widow her son, fully alive and in good health. And then it says that he stayed there many more days. But at that moment, when he brings that child to the widow, she says, surely your God is God. You know, you brought my son back to life. And so once again, we see this miraculous power of God working through Elijah, and how Elijah was a recipient of God's blessings through his ministry. And so he's proclaimed, no rain, and it didn't rain. God said, go to the brook. He went to the brook, and he got fed by ravens. Then God said, hey, go to Zarephath. So he goes to Zarephath, so that widow's going to take care of him. She did. And then, you know what? Son died, but he raised that son back to life by the power of God, by praying for him, and God did it. And one thing, just one thing after another, God was doing some amazing things. But it's because Elijah listened to the Lord. Now, once again, it says the word of the Lord came to Elijah. And you know what he says now? He says, now it's time. It's been about 3 years. And he says, Elijah, it's time. Go find Ahab. And so Elijah, he leaves the widow. He leaves the place where he's been resting and relaxing. And he heads off, and he goes to, he starts heading towards Jezreel, basically that direction. And while he's on his way, he runs into Obadiah. Now, we have to understand what's happening at this time. Ahab, the Bible tells us that Ahab had Obadiah, which was his servant of his household, basically his administrator, perhaps you might say. Anyway, he said, we need to find water. That we're in this drought. We need to find water, not for our people. Now, it doesn't say that, but it's interesting. He doesn't mention the people. He said, for our horses. And when you think about why in the world is he looking for water for the horses? Well, it's because Ahab still wanted to have a strong army. He still wanted to provide for his military so that he could keep his kingdom. His kingdom and his power was more important than his people. And so he tells Obadiah, hey, you go this direction, I'm going to go this direction. We have to find water so that we can supply water for our horses and for our cattle. And so Ahab goes one direction, Obadiah's going another direction, and Obadiah comes and he sees Elijah. And as soon as he sees Elijah, Obadiah falls to the ground, and he says, oh, master. He knows who Elijah is. Matter of fact, turns out Obadiah is a believer. He's a follower of God. Now, he's working for Ahab. He's part of the house there, but he is a follower of God. And Obadiah says, Elijah, he goes, you know, when they started tearing down the altars and killing the prophets of God, I hid 100 prophets in caves, 50 in each cave, and I have been providing for them food and water to take care of them. And I was like, you know, that's pretty cool. Here's Elijah coming across. Now Obadiah, who trusts in the Lord, who's actually working for the king, and something like that. And he says, but hey, look, I've saved 100 prophets. And Elijah says, okay, well, it's time for me to talk to Ahab. So go get Ahab, bring your master back here, and I need to talk to him. Matter of fact, we're gonna meet. And Obadiah's a little edgy. He's like, yeah, but you know what? We've been searching for you. Actually, Ahab's been searching for you for the last 3 years. And he's, kind of upset. And what's going to happen is, God's with you, and God protects you, and God watches over you. And he goes, what happens when I go and I tell Ahab, hey, guess what? I ran into Elijah, and why don't you come over here and talk to Elijah, because he wants to talk to you. And then when we get there, God takes you up. God moves you somewhere else, and you disappear again. He goes, surely he's going to kill me. And so Elijah reassures Obadiah. He says, assures the Lord. He goes, the Lord wants this to happen. He goes, so you go do that. I promise I will be here. And so he goes on. And he goes get Ahab. And they finally have this reunion. And when Ahab comes to Elijah, I love, he says, oh, here you are. And he says, matter of fact, in chapter 18, verse 17, he says, when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is this you, troubler of Israel? Why did he call him a troubler? He's like, oh, you caused this drought. You're the troubler of Israel. Well, this is what he said. He goes, and he said, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals. And so, Elijah just puts him in his place. He goes, look, you're the one who's troubled Israel. You're the one who has put Israel in the place that it is right now because of your idolatry, because you have forsaken God and you have followed this Baal worship and the Asherah. He goes, you are the troubler of Israel. And he said, so now then, he goes, gather to me. He goes, I want you to gather to me all the sons of Israel. He goes, gather the people of Israel. And then on top of that, I want you to gather the prophets of Baal and the prophets of Asherah and meet me at Mount Carmel. We're going to have a showdown. We're going to have a showdown. We're going to settle this once and for all. And so Ahab does that. He calls all of Israel to meet up with him. And so here is Elijah. He goes to Mount Carmel, and he's gathered together, and he addresses the people. The people are gathered around, and he addresses the people. He says, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. But the people did not answer. They were just silent. They had nothing to say. They just kind of, So Elijah says, okay, so here's the thing. Tell you what, this is what we're going to do. I'm the only prophet here. I'm the one prophet of the Lord right here. But there's 450 prophets of Baal here, right? He said, all right, let them bring some oxen. We're going to take 2 oxen. And what we're going to do, we're going to build an altar. We'll take the oxen, we'll place them on the altars, and we're going to call out to our gods, your little g God. And I'm going to call out to the God. And whoever brings fire to consume that offering is God. And he goes, you know what? I'm even going to give you a little bit of edge. I'm going to let you go first. So if you go first and you bring fire, then boom, it's over. I don't even get a chance, right? I mean, if fire comes, when they start worshiping Baal and fire comes to consume that, are the people even going to wait for Elijah to try to do anything? No, it's over. It's all right. They won. So he says, you know what? I'm so confident. He goes, you get to go first. And said all the people thought, oh, that sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. So sure enough, they get their altar. They build their altar. They get all the stuff together. And it says, here's the Baal worship. So from early in the morning, they start dancing and chanting and calling out to Baal and doing their ritual kind of stuff. And they do this from breakfast or from that morning all the way till noontime. And finally at noontime, I mean, here's Elijah. He's standing there. He's watching this whole mess. And finally around noontime, he kind of gets a little cantankerous. He gets a little, he's like, I'm going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to poke the bear. And so he said, hey, maybe he's occupied. You know what it kind of refers to there when it says occupied? It means maybe he's on the toilet. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Just give him a minute. Or maybe he's on a trip. Maybe he went on vacation. He's on vacation and he just can't hear you because he went on a trip. He went on vacation. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's just got to sit down and he's sleeping. So maybe you just need to wake him up. Maybe you need to yell a little bit louder. And so sure enough, it says that their worship got even louder, but they started cutting themselves with lances and stuff, which was part of their practice, until blood was gushing out on them. And so here they are, bleeding all over the place, jumping up and down, performing their rituals, and making all kinds of racket. And they've been doing this since morning, and now it's gone past lunchtime, and now we're getting into the evening sacrifice time. And then Elijah finally comes up and he says, all right. And let me see if I can find this one part. Yes. So in verse 29, it says, when midday was past, they raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answered, and no one paid attention. So not only did they not arouse a God because he doesn't exist, but it says that even the people there got to the point where they weren't paying attention. So all the people of Israel that were gathered around have basically really got bored with these guys and all their antics and dancing and everything to them, because they've been there since early morning and nothing had happened. And so basically they kind of lost, they had kind of got to the point where they're not paying attention anymore. They had lost interest in essence. And so Elijah comes and he says to all the people, he says, hey, come near to me. Come here. Come here. I want to show you something. And so they gather around. And so then he starts gathering stones. And he starts to build the altar of God back. He gathers 12 stones for the 12 tribes of Israel, the name that they were known for. And he puts those stones there. He gets the sacrifice prepared. And then he does something different. He digs a trench around the altar. And it says that it was a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. I tried to figure out what 2 measures of seed was, and from what I could find, it was maybe 3 or 4 gallons of water, something like that. And so he dug this trench around the altar, and then he says, hey, these pitchers are right here. There's 4 large pitchers. I want you to fill up these pitchers, and I want you to pour it on the sacrifice. Pour it all over the altar. And so they get that water, and they pour it all over the altar, and he goes, hey, do that again. So they went, and they filled them up again, and they poured them all over the altar, and he goes, hey, one more time. And so they get the pitchers again, they pour it all over the altar. So 3 times they had poured, to the point that everything was saturated. Water was just flowing down the sides. The trench was full of water. Everything was just filled with water. And then he says a prayer. You know, the bell worship, they were yelling and screaming and saying all kinds of stuff all day long. And I think it's interesting. Look at this. This is his prayer. Look how short this prayer is. O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back again. That short, that was his prayer. That short of a little prayer, and boom, fire from heaven came. It came down, and I love what it says. It says that in 38, I think it is, yes. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, and licked up every part of water. I'm like, that's pretty impressive. So the God, when he showed up big. Not only did he set that sacrifice on fire, but he set the sacrifice, he burnt up the wood till it was no more. The stones were no more. And when they were dust, then he burned up all the dust, and all the dust was gone as well, including the water. God showed up. And it says that then the people, they fell on their face. So they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Immediately, Elijah says, seize the prophets of Baal. And so they grabbed the prophets of Baal, and he took and he slaughtered them. He had them all killed. And so he got rid of all the prophets. And then he turns to Ahab. And he says, Ahab, you need to go get some food and water. You need to eat. Or I guess I think he tells his servant actually to go do that. But he says, go have him eat and drink and prepare, because a storm is coming. Rain is coming. And it says that Elijah goes up to the mountain. He goes to the top of Mount Carmel, and he puts his face between his knees, and he sends his servant to go look. And he says, tell me if you see anything. And he sends him 7 times. And the 7th time, his servant comes back and says, there is a cloud the size of a fist, size size of a hand. And he says, okay, go tell Ahab that he needs to prepare and head to Jezreel. He needs to ride because the storm is coming. And immediately it's getting dark, wind is blowing hard, and a heavy rain comes. And so Ahab takes off towards Jezreel, and then it says that the hand of the Lord was on Elijah. It says, so the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and it said that he girded up his loins. So basically, he took his tunic or his robe, and he ties it up so he could maneuver well, right? So he ties it up so it's not dragging, it doesn't get in his way, and he takes off and runs in front of the chariot of Ahab and beats him to Jezreel. Now, how far is that from Mount Carmel? It's 17 miles. 17 miles. Now, I don't know if Ahab's chariots, horses were just really slow, but even if it was a slow horse, I mean, come on. And maybe he was getting stuck in mud already. I don't know. But it's interesting that he gets this renewed strength from the Lord. He girds himself up, and he takes off running, and he runs 17 miles to Jezreel, and he outruns the chariots. And so I'm thinking something like this. I've given him a new name. He's Flash Elijah. Super fast, Flash Elijah. And I just have this picture of, man, But isn't that what we do sometimes? We look at these guys, and we think of them like superheroes. Right? I mean, think of all the crazy, miraculous things that he has done. I mean, granted, the Lord working through him. But a boy has been raised from the dead. He was fed by ravens. He was, the oil and the flour never ran out. He calls down fire from heaven. And all these things had taken place. He had killed all the prophets of Baal. And then he runs 17 miles and beats a chariot to Jezreel. Man, kind of like a superhero. And so he gets there, and I'm thinking he's probably expecting something. I think he's excited. I think he's pumped. And maybe that's why he ran so fast. He's excited about the hopes of tomorrow. Because think of just what has occurred. All the people that was there cried out, "The Lord is God. The Lord is God." All the people of Israel cried out, "The Lord is God." Ahab was there. Ahab the king is one of the sons of Israel. And he cried out, "The Lord is God." Because it says all the people cried out, "The Lord is God." As a matter of fact, they even had some nice conversations. They had some nice relationships between there, because here is Elijah telling him, "Hey, man, why don't you go ahead and get something to eat and drink? Because you're going to need to get ready to head back to Jezreel." And so Ahab's not trying to kill him. He's not trying to do anything to him. He's like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to go eat." And then Elijah even tells him, "Hey, it's time to go. Let's go." And then he runs before him. Now, this is the interesting thing. I found out that it is actually fairly commonplace to have runners before a king. There were servants and runners, heralds, that would run before the king's chariots. And it's very possible what Elijah is saying by being this runner, by running in front of the chariot, these 17 miles, is saying, "Hey, you are the king. You are the anointed king of the northern kingdom. And I am humbling myself, and I will be a servant of the king." And I'm thinking, in his mind, to help you and guide you as we bring the children of Israel back to the Lord our God. God just displayed everything. Everyone just cried out, "The Lord is God." And we need to do some cleaning house. We need to correct some things. And you're going to need help. You're going to need guidance as we straighten the ship. And I want you to know that I have a humble heart, and I'm willing to serve you in that manner. And so he runs before the chariot all the way there with great expectation for what was about to happen. This excitement boiling up that, wow, I've been zealous for the Lord. This is what I'm excited for. I want the people of Israel to be all about God. And it's finally happening. And he gets there. And it says that Ahab goes in and he goes to his wife. Goes in the palace and he talks to Jezebel. And he says, hey. He tells her everything that Elijah did. Talks about the fire falling from heaven. That he killed all the prophets. Maybe Ahab was thinking, hey, maybe we should follow God. After all, he did just burn up that sacrifice and all the things around there. And all the people are really following him right now. And they killed all your prophets. And so, I don't know what is in Ahab's mind. We don't. But we do know that just earlier, he did say, the Lord is God. We do know earlier that he was there when all that took place. He saw the mighty power of God. He couldn't deny that. But when he got home, he was face to face with Jezebel. And she kind of rules the roost. Maybe Elijah and maybe even Ahab hoped that she too would go, wow, okay, so God showed up and maybe I've been worshiping the wrong thing all these years. And so maybe things need to change. That's not what happened. It says that now Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a message to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me even more if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. She goes, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Who sent that message? Ahab didn't send that message. Jezebel did. Jezebel's like, no, we're not having that. I'm going to kill you. We find that Elijah responds. And it said that he was afraid. And he rose and he ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. And he left his servant there. But he himself went another day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down underneath the juniper tree. Have things ever not worked out the way that you wanted them in your life? Maybe things that you had prayed about, things that were for the Lord, you hope to honor God in. Maybe it was a job, maybe it was a certain ministry, maybe it's in your marriage, maybe it's a wayward child that you prayed for and prayed for and prayed for. Have you ever been disappointed? I think that we have Elijah here. He just came off the greatest mountaintop experience, seeing the power of God. With such expectation and hope to see the nation changed. To get it shattered. And his response is that he runs in fear. And not only does he run in fear, he runs far. See, Beersheba was the very southernmost tip of Judah. So here he is in Jezreel, which is in the northern kingdom. Then there's Judah, the southern kingdom. And he runs to Beersheba, which is the very southern tip of that. So he runs all the way through Judah to the very tip, leaves his servant there, and then he goes out into the wilderness, another day's journey. And this is what he says. He says, it is enough now, Lord. Take my life, for I am not better than my father's. He said, God, I'm done. It's enough. I'm done with this ministry. I'm done with my service. I'm done. I can't take it anymore. Matter of fact, I'm so done. Take my life. Kill me. I want to die. He says, I'm no better than my fathers. And we wonder, what does he mean by that? I'm no better than my fathers. He's saying that he's been unable to do what all his fathers, the prophets before him, were able to do. They have not been able to eradicate Baal worship from the children. They haven't been able to turn all the children back to God and something like that. And so he goes, I have failed at my ministry. I'm a failure. God, I give up. I can't do it anymore. Take my life. I'm a failure. See, oftentimes we think of these guys as these superheroes. But I like this in James. James, it says, in verse 17, chapter 5, verse 7, it says, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. It talks about his prayer. He was a prayer of a righteous man. He accomplished a lot of things with his prayer life. But you know what? Not only was he a man of prayer, but he was also a guy who struggled with the physical limits that we have. The struggles that we have. Being scared, being afraid. These different things. And so Elijah had hit burnout. He was physically tired. He was emotionally tired. He was spiritually tired. He was ministerially tired. He had been living on the run for 3 years. The Lord had provided for him. He had spent all day at Mount Carmel, all day up there, not eating. He tells Ahab to go eat, but he didn't go eat. He went on the top of the Mount Carmel and waited for that cloud to come. And then he runs 17 miles to Jezreel. Then he gets this bad news and he freaks out. He gets scared and he doesn't wait on the word of the Lord. The word of the Lord is what has told him to go everywhere he's gone. Even when he's been to face Ahab, when he was to go to Zarephath, it was always the word of the Lord that told him where to go. But this time, he didn't wait for the word of the Lord. He ran in fear. He ran and he was afraid. And not only did he run from there, which is, about 100 miles from Jezreel and down there. So he goes to that point. He goes even further than that. We find out that he's burnt out and he's laying there and he's underneath this juniper tree and he's just tired and he goes to sleep. And then an angel comes to him, touches him, and it says, arise. And he goes, have some bread. And so on hot stones, he had fresh baked bread cake. It says bread cake. I don't know if it was angel food cake, but bread cake. But it was hot made fresh cake on a hot stone, keeping it warm in the middle of nowhere, and then a jar of water. That's how God provided for him. And so the angel came in, and he got up, he rose, he ate his food, he drank some water, and then he goes back to sleep. And then we don't know how much time passed, but then the angel, it says the angel of the Lord. Now, every time we see the angel of the Lord, you know, the angel of the Lord is Christ. It's the incarnate Christ. It's the second person of the Godhead. Every time that we see angel of the Lord in the Old Testament, it's usually referring to Christ. And so it says the angel of the Lord comes and touches him again. It says, hey, arise and eat and drink. For the journey before you is too much. And so he eats and he drinks, and then he goes on a journey. Now, it doesn't say that the angel tells him to go on the journey that he goes on. He just says that the journey that you have before you is too much for you. And so he takes off and he goes towards Mount Horeb, or what we know in the mountain of God, or Mount Sinai. And so he goes to Mount Sinai, which is another like 300 miles south. So he's still going further and further away. And so he goes all the way down there, and he goes to the mountain of God, and then God comes to him and says, hey, what are you doing here, Elijah? It says a word of the Lord. Once again, this prophetic statement that would be given to a prophet. What are you doing here, Elijah? And Elijah responds, he goes, I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. The sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And then we know we're probably familiar with what happens next. God says, hey, go stand out on the mountain. And it says that a great wind came, actually a wind that broke the rocks and crashed and split things and all this kind of stuff, this great, powerful wind. And then after the wind, of course, God wasn't in that wind. It's the God passing by. It's manifestation of his power, but he wasn't in that. He wasn't speaking to him in that. But you have the wind, and then you have the earthquake, and the ground shakes. And then after the earthquake, you have fire. But the Lord wasn't in the fire either. And then it says that a gentle whisper. A gentle whisper. Or it's called a thin silence. I don't know what it was. But it was just kind of quiet. And when Elijah heard that, it said then he goes to the entrance of the cave. Maybe he hadn't ever gone out to the mountain side as God had told him earlier. Or maybe he did and he went back in. But now we know what he's doing. He walks to the door of the cave. And he hears this. Earlier I said the word of the Lord came, prophetic word. And it said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" But now it's a different word. The word in the Hebrew is different. It's not this prophetic word of the Lord. It's just a still voice that comes to him and once again says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It's like there's a tenderness about it. There's a gentleness the second time. Elijah, he responds the same way. He says, "Hey, once again, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, the sons of Israel. They have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, they killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away." Something that we should pull out here and understand is that partial truths are untruths. He was making statements and making them sound worse than they were, and they weren't totally true, so that he could be in his pity party. We do that. Matter of fact, it says that he was zealous for the Lord until he ran in fear. The Israelites have forsaken God's covenant until they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord is God," right back at Mount Carmel. He was the only prophet left. And the other 100 prophets that Obadiah had hidden in the caves. And he was up against the world. "They seek my life." The nation. They did not seek his life. It was Jezebel. We often do that when we're struggling with things and we want to wallow in our self-pity. We take partial truths, but partial truths are untruths. Much like our media today. They don't tell the whole truth, just part of the truth, which makes it an untruth many times. And that's what he did here. And I like the way God responds. So, here God says, "Elijah, what are you doing?" And Elijah responds the exact same way. He tells the exact same rote kind of thing that he's going through. He's having his pity party. And I want you to know, God did not let him wallow in that. He didn't coddle him. He didn't go, "Oh, you poor baby." He didn't do anything like that. He does this. He says, and the Lord said to him, "Go, return your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you have arrived, you're going to anoint Hazael as king. You're going to anoint Jehu as king. You're going to also anoint a prophet in your place, which is going to be Elisha." He goes, "Oh, yeah, and by the way," he said, "we're going to kill all the prophets of Baal, and yet we'll leave 7,000 people in Israel who have not bowed to Baal." And so he says a few different things here. He goes, "You got a job. First thing, go return to Damascus. You were never supposed to be at Mount Sinai. Jezreel here, look at this map. Jezreel is about in the middle. Beersheba is down here in the south. And Sinai is like another 300 miles off this map. Damascus is that circle at the very top. It says, return your way to Damascus. He was supposed to still be serving the Lord in Israel where he was called to serve the Lord, not be running to the other Israel kingdom. And so he runs all the way down there. But I like this. This is kind of summing this up. God is so gentle to his burnout servant. Like I said, he didn't coddle him, but he gave him so many different things. He gave him rest. He gave him food and water. He gave him time. He gave him an assignment. Go back to Damascus. Go back and do what you're supposed to be doing. And he gave him assurance. He said, you know what? There's 7,000 that haven't turned to bells. Your ministry is not a failure. And he gave him an apprentice, Elijah, who is to minister to him. And it actually says that. It says after Elijah burned his plow and sacrificed his oxen, that he followed after Elijah and ministered to him. I think that's pretty cool. And so, as we finish this up, these are my takeaways for us to apply to our own life. It's what I want to apply to my own life, is that when we go through those times in life where we're burnt out, we're stressed out physically, emotionally, spiritually, ministerially, of the things going on in our life, here's the thing. We need rest. We need to make sure that we have rest in our life, our body, our mind, and our soul. We need sleep. We need to meditate and spend time in prayer. We also probably need a spiritual sabbatical where we get away with God, where we can just be consumed with God for a period of time. We need rest. Next, we need nutrition. We need to eat healthy food and drink water. Don't go get yourself a pizza and drink a whole bunch of Coke. We need some healthy food and water to replenish us, to be healthy, to regain energy. For us in our culture, we probably need to take some supplement vitamins and something like that because we're not getting the nutrition off a lot of our food. So we need rest. We need nutrition. We need the right perspective of self. We need to think more of God and less of us. Elijah's problem is that he got his eyes off the Lord, much like Peter did when he was walking on water. He started looking at the storms around him, and then he sank. Elijah's the same thing. He didn't wait on the word of the Lord. He wasn't keeping his eye on the Lord, and he got afraid. He got scared, much like Peter did. So we need to think more of God and less of self. Communicate with God. Time in the Word. And remove the noise so that you can hear his whisper. We got so much stuff going on in our life. Social media, TVs, radios. K-Love is great, but you know what? Sometimes it'd be good if you just turn off K-Love and sit in silence so that you can hear God. And I love K-Love. But sometimes even good, godly things can be a noise that distracts us from hearing God. So communicate with God. Obey God. Move forward in obedience and service. God has called you to a ministry. God has called you to service. Each one of us are given gifts and abilities that we're to use for the service of the Lord. And so, just like Elijah says, hey, get back to work. Go back to Damascus. We have something that we're continuing to be doing. God has called us to serve. We aren't just to say, oh, I'm tired, I'm depressed, and so I'm going to quit doing everything. No, we're to continue to obey and move forward and serve God. And last, delegate. Share the ministry with others and train up the next generation. Share the ministry with others and train up the next generation. I think some of the time this is where we fail. We try to take it all on ourselves, and we don't share the ministry. We don't ask for help. And we're not really training up the next generation sometimes the way that we should. That discipleship that's going on so that God's work can continue on. Because you know what? Elijah didn't actually anoint those two kings. That was the assignment. It ended up being his apprentice, Elisha, who anointed those guys as king. And those two kings and Elisha, they're the ones who actually eradicated Baal worship in the northern kingdom. It wasn't Elijah, but it was his apprentice and those two kings that did. So, delegate, share the ministry, and train up the next generation. So that's my takeaway on this. I hope you got something out of it. I know I did. It was very helpful for me. I enjoyed it. And of course, it ends with Elijah going up to heaven in a fiery chariot. And even though he asked God, hey, please kill me, take my life, I want to die, he never did die. He just went up in a fiery chariot to heaven. Oh, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I think that's pretty cool. What we're going to do now, Billy's going to get ready for baptism, and so we're going to have a baptism in just a few minutes. I'm going to have the praise team come up here. We're going to lead y'all in a song, and we're going to go back and get ready. So I'll let y'all get us ready, and y'all can stand and do a little bit of worship. Take a look at everybody. All right. Well, Billy, to y'all, this is Billy Burkett. Do you know the Lord is your Savior?
Yes.
Yes. Amen. He does. We have talked, and just so happy and glad that I get to baptize you. And the neat thing is that what baptism is, it's a picture. It's a picture and a testimony on the outside of what has happened on the inside. Baptism doesn't save you, but it's a picture and a testimony to the world around us that God has done something on the inside. God has saved him on the inside, changed his life. And so, it's my privilege, Billy Burkett, that I get to baptize you. And so, I baptize you, my brother, Billy Burkett, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, buried with Christ in baptism, raised to walk in newness of life. Amen. Good job. All right. Amen. Isn't that great? Tell you what, Daniel Garrett, would you mind closing us out in prayer?